What if the biggest obstacle to your growth isn't what you think it is? In this premiere episode, Ross reveals why compliance teams are seen as roadblocks instead of growth accelerators, and how smart healthcare CEOs are flipping the script entirely. You'll discover the costly mistake most leaders make when they treat compliance like a bookshelf program, and the simple shift that transforms compliance officers from barriers into strategic partners. Ross also shares the one question every CEO should ask their compliance team that will change everything. This is how healthcare leaders turn compliance into their secret competitive weapon. Season 5 of the Compliance Advantage podcast starts now.
Welcome to the Compliance Advantage podcast. This is where healthcare executives transform compliance from a burden into a strategic asset that drives both growth and peace of mind. I'm your host, Ross Ronan, founder of Ronan Healthcare Compliance and a healthcare compliance strategist with nearly 30 years of industry experience. I'll help you stay ahead of evolving regulations while building the sustainable, compliant organization that lets you focus on high-level strategy and exceptional patient outcomes. Remember, compliance pays dividends. Invest today.
Ross, one of the biggest challenges compliance leaders often face is getting buy-in from business stakeholders. What's your take on why these conversations can be so tricky?
You know, when you think about compliance programs, and this is the way it's kind of always been, is, leaders often see compliance programs as a barrier to being able to do what they really want to do. And what I mean by that is they want to grow, they want to strategically develop, and in a lot of cases they want to make money after providing great quality patient care. And when they look at compliance, they generally see that it really becomes a barrier to those things that they really want to do. And honestly, I believe that compliance officers and programs have created that type of environment because when we first started many, many years ago, that we were empowered to have everybody ask for permission if they can do something against the regulations or maybe in the gray area of the regulations. And in truth, compliance should be more of a compass than a cop, and really being able to provide guidance to those organizations. Business leaders often think that it's something that I have to have. We call it a bookshelf compliance program. I can just create this checklist of things that I have to do, put it on the bookshelf, and reference it every now and then. Or when someone comes and calls, I can pull it off the shelf, dust it off, and give it to them and say, here's our compliance program. And that's not the way it works anymore. It may be the way it worked many, many years ago, but not today. It really has to be that living, breathing thing. And when we talk about compliance programs as compliance executives and compliance professionals, we really need to be changing that theme, changing that discussion to show how it really can become a growth accelerator and really a compliance advantage to the organization.
So how do you go about shifting that perception? What's the key to reframing compliance in a more positive light?
When you think about compliance and where it needs to go, it's no different than any other department within an organization. Most departments have to perform upon strategic goals, and so should the compliance program. There should be some strategic efforts that need to happen from a compliance program standpoint. And when we talk about using those strategic objectives, the company's going to be looking on growth, efficiencies, how it operates, and how it can actually go into other states. And really, a lot in healthcare too, we see it just trying to expand its network of patients that they can take care of in a positive way with good quality care. So when you think about that growth and strategy, the compliance program needs to be thinking about that as well. How can I modify what we do in the compliance program? How can I help an organization be strategic and navigate the really complex rules and regulations that we have to deal with in healthcare. And that's really being more of a guide and a compass versus just telling everybody no, that they can't do it. And I think that's the easy way, right? And compliance programs oftentimes will take the easy way out, and compliance officers do, and that really gives a very difficult time for a company to be able to use that as its competitive advantage if we're always trying to say, no, you can't do something, or it take the easy way out as opposed to trying to find the right way to do it. So it really is a change and a shift in kind of how you talk about the compliance program, what key objectives and goals it's going to bring to an organization, in addition to protecting it, in addition to ensuring that it doesn't violate the regulations and pay a bunch of fines or individuals go to jail. Those are the basic needs of an organization and compliance program. But at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that the company is allowed to do its strategic thinking, and we change the language to say, here's your barriers. Let's get in the middle of the road and let's go as fast as we can.
I love that focus on proactive, positive messaging. And I imagine you still run into some common objections. What are the pushbacks you hear most often from business leaders?
I think the biggest one is, compliance just gets in the way. If I talk to compliance, it's going to bog us down. It's going to slow us down. It's not going to allow us to achieve the goals that we need to achieve in a certain period of time. I often hear, what, we've always done it this way and therefore we're good. Also, I hear a lot of, we have the most compliant people in the company and therefore everybody's always compliant. Well, there's a big difference in being compliant and really trying to ensure that we're following the rules and the regulations. I think inherently most people are ethical and they're moral individuals and they don't want to do harm and they don't want to do bad things. But hearing this, we're compliant because we're good people, is not necessarily being compliant and following the regulations. I also hear this, we're too small. No one's looking at us. Compliance is too expensive. We can't afford to actually put in the resources or a compliance program because we just don't make enough money, or we don't, we're too small for anybody to look at. Well, when I think about the counterpoints to all of those arguments, starting with the last one, is you're only small enough until someone gets really upset with you, and then you become big enough to give money back and get penalties. So yes, it's true that most companies that are large get focused on from a compliance perspective. On the converse side of it, all it takes is you to, piss off one person, piss off one employee, piss off one patient, piss off one provider who comes to the government and says, hey, they're doing bad things or they're not following the regulations. Well, guess what? Now you're not too small for anybody. And I know lots of regulators who find that necessary to go after anybody who's committing fraud, waste, and abuse. When we talk about compliance slows us down, maybe that's a effect of a previous compliance program that someone who says they're not a strategic partner. But when you think about compliance being a strategic partner and your compliance officer, your compliance executive, wanting to really help you as a business leader, as a CEO, achieve all the things that you want to achieve, it does anything but slow you down, right? Again, I use a lot of car references. If you're driving really fast, you got all these race car drivers who are driving around the tracks. Do you think they're going to drive just as fast without their seatbelts on, without their 4-point harnesses, without their helmet, without all the things that they need to do to protect them? Absolutely not. They put these things in place so they can drive really, 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 really fast because they know that they're protected. That's the same way you got to think about a compliance program. If you're driving your car without insurance, are you going to be more cautious or less cautious? You're going to be probably a little less cautious because you know you're insured. Somebody else is taking that risk and someone else is making sure that you're okay. It's the same kind of concept. And lastly, that I always like to leave on, is compliance expensive? I don't think it's more expensive than any other department. And I don't think when you look at compliance in comparison to other departments or other salaries that are, what encompasses most of a compliance department, which is generally salaries and auditing and monitoring. Those are generally the things that cost the most in a compliance program. When you think about a big scheme of things, if your compliance program is doing what it's doing, it's auditing and monitoring, it's looking at your claims if you're a healthcare agency or your healthcare company, and you're making mistakes on a billing and coding perspective, the best case scenario is you really have to see it, refund the money, and fix the problems and move on. So what could be a $100,000 refund to the federal government, if you're not looking at it, you're not taking proactive care in what you're doing from a billing and coding standpoint, there are civil monetary penalties that actually topped on top of those False Claims Act issues, which up to, I think it's now between $20,000 and $30,000. It changes per inflation. But $20,000 to $30,000 per claim per violation, now something that is $100,000 now became $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. And that doesn't even take into account treble damages on the False Claims Act. So a $100,000 issue, if you knowingly or unknowingly cause a false claim to be submitted to the federal government for reimbursement, definition of a false claim, then you truly can suffer treble damages. So your $100,000 refund now becomes $3,000. So when you think about it from that standpoint, the cost of compliance is far cheaper than the cost of non-compliance.
Those are some great counterpoints, and I love how you put some numbers to those points as well. Beyond changing perceptions, how do you drive actual behavior change and get business leaders to actively engage with compliance?
We're all people in the big scheme of things, whether you're a CEO, COO, compliance executive, CFO, we're all people. And I think sometimes when we get into business, we don't really make things personal. And I think we need to make things personal on a compliance perspective, because there is a way to talk to a business leader where you're not only appealing to their better judgment on what you should do from a compliance standpoint and following the regulations, but also how it affects patient care and how it affects patients in the industry. And once you start talking about how there could be detrimental risks to the organization, to the individual, not just financially, but also reputationally. And no one wants their reputation tarnished. They really don't. A lot of people say they don't care. I say I don't care a lot of those times too. But at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we're seen as the right individuals. So I think making it personal is really important. Next, you need to celebrate what you win on in a compliance program, your successes. Oftentimes, we just kind of tuck those away and go, nothing happened, or that's great, or we got out of that one, that's good too. Everybody wants to see an ROI on compliance, and if you have some successes, I think it's very important that you celebrate those and let people know. When you talk about business leaders and accountability when it comes to compliance, that's a very important topic as well. I've had leaders come to me before, CEOs, and say, you're in charge of compliance, just make sure I don't get in trouble or the company doesn't do anything wrong. And my general response to that is, yeah, we all will. We'll all have that conversation because we're all in this together. It's not just me as the compliance executive running the compliance program. It's the executive compliance committee. It's the board of directors. We all talk to each other. This is one big happy family when we talk about compliance. And if you don't like the way it's run, let's talk about it. If you don't like the way that we're being conservative, let's talk about it. If you don't like the way we're being too liberal, let's talk about it. But we all have an objective here. We all have accountability when it comes to it. I often say when we start a new executive compliance committee that it's not a one-way street in these committees, because we call it the executive compliance committee for a reason, because the executive leadership is there and everybody has a dog in that hunt, and the hunt being compliance. And so when we talk about it with them, we say this is not a one-way street. We're going to ask your opinions. We're going to ask for your guidance. We're going to ask for your feedback. If it's just a one-way street of compliance reporting, that's not accountability. Yeah, they've heard it, but I need you to participate. I need you to talk to me. I need you to have conversations. And that's how the compliance program really becomes a living, breathing thing. And lastly, just really fostering that open line of communication and dialogue. If you're not communicating the things that you know as a compliance program, then it's not doing anybody any good. Literally had this conversation the other day on a webinar that if you know something that the executive team doesn't know and it's risky to the organization, you have failed as a compliance officer. The object is to ensure that the people who need to know, and the ways to mitigate those situations are actually well known. And a lot of compliance people will say, I want to keep this to myself, or I want to keep this low, I want to keep this, really under the radar. And I would say, if it's not complete, concise, and clear on your answers that you're giving, if it's not done, you don't need to share it, right? You can possibly give some potential ideas of the risks that you have, but if it's not finished, you shouldn't set everybody off into a tailspin, if you will. But if you know something is out there and you know something is ready to go, it's not worth your time, effort, and your own personal liability as a compliance executive to keep that from the people who need to know. And you make sure that that information is relevant to the organization. There's a lot of compliance officers who will communicate things that are not important, make them important because for some reason they think it's important. And when the board or the CEO says, what's my risk here? And the answer is, well, not much, or some irrelevant risks that don't really mean a risk, you lose all credibility. And when you lose credibility, it's like crying wolf, right? It's like Chicken Little. No one's going to listen to you the next time you do have something that's really important, because they're going to say, nah, you just literally have kind of spun me out of control for no reason because you don't know what you're doing, and or you just think that everything is a fire that needs to be put out. The goal ultimately when we're talking to business leaders is showing how compliance can be really part of that natural conversation, the natural progression, the natural function of an organization, where it's not even up for debate on whether or not it's there, it's proactive, it's resourced. It has to be the number one piece of the discussion when it comes to business leaders, and especially in healthcare.
This has been incredibly helpful. And before we close out, what is one thing you want compliance leaders to remember as they work to engage their business partners?
A, it takes time. B, it's not easy. If it's easy, everybody do it, and there would be a bunch of people out there being compliance executives. And I would say the ones that are truly achieving those goals are a handful, and I think everybody else is striving to do it. The people that are not achieving their goals as a compliance executive, really being a strategic partner, really being a leader within an organization, they stop becoming compliance officers at a period of time. But the people who have done it for a really long time have figured out how to be that strategic partner, how to build that relationship. And it takes time. And you have to have the conversations over and over again. You have to have a even keel about you. You have to be able to know what's relevant. You have to be able to express what you need to express to those that need to know and why it's important. I often tell a lot of my staff and compliance executives that I mentor, they bring me an issue, and the number one thing that I always say to them is, why do I care? Tell me why I care. If you can articulate to me why I care, then it's a compliance issue. If you cannot articulate to me why I care, what regulation it violates, what risks that are out there, it's not a compliance issue, and you shouldn't be bringing it up. And I think every board member, every CEO should be asking their compliance executives the exact same thing. Tell me why I care. And if they cannot articulate it, then it's probably not something that should be focused on. Ultimately, what you really want to do is understand the business and understand where the business leaders are coming from. They have a job to do just as a compliance executive has a job to do. And their job is to build growth, it's to expand network, it's to provide great patient care. and it's to make sure that the company operates in an ethical manner. Sit in their shoes. Think about the other side of what it would be when you're having a conversation with somebody. So if you have a CEO on the other side, imagine yourself talking to yourself and yourself being that CEO. Would you want to hear the things that you're telling that individual who is responsible for thousands to 2,000s to tens of thousands of employees and families that are salaried people that they're paying for, and everybody's trying to make a living? Sitting on the other side of that table, put yourself in their position. Understand what they need to do, understand their business, understand their requirements that their job is asking of them, their board's asking of them, and put yourself in their position. And then finally, most compliance executives need to shift their mindset in being a strategic partner. And if you don't know how to do that, go find a mentor. Go find a business mentor, find a compliance mentor. Find somebody who can teach you how to be a strategic partner while still following the rules and the regulations so that the company stays protected. That would be the best guidance that I could ever give. And I would say any CEO out there, any board who absolutely loves their compliance officer, who wants them to grow into an executive vice president as well as a compliance officer, get them some mentoring, get them some guidance, get them some help to say, this is how we act as an executive. And executive coaching, it's a dime a dozen. There's a lot of them out there. Executive compliance coaching takes a little bit more of a nuance. And I would definitely look for that if you like your compliance officer and believe that they have a longevity in compliance.
Such great advice, Ross. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
I love doing it, Cammie. Thanks for the interview questions. I always like to give my guidance out there. And anybody who's listening, if you're really looking for a more business tactical approach for compliance, download our podcasts, listen to what we have to say on those. We have some great guests on season 4, CEOs, business owners, private equity groups who really talk about how compliance had really changed their business and created an advantage for them, and how they use it as an advantage, how they use it to foster growth within their company and strategic thinking within the organization. And there's a lot of people out there who have mastered that key. And we go through a lot of those different episodes in episode 4, season 4. So yeah, download that. It's great. Season 5's here to come, and it's going to be a great one too. We have a lot of great guests that are going to talk about how they utilize compliance as an advantage. And everybody has a little bit different perspective on it, so it's very fascinating. I look forward to this season. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Compliance Advantage podcast. If you enjoyed it, please rate, review, and share this episode with someone who might benefit from it. Don't forget to visit us at ronanhc.com for more resources and connect with us on social media for the latest updates. And remember, compliance pays dividends. Invest today.